the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand, and baseball in the summer, someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer, baseball in the summer.
The Brock VMAC Legendary Rivals podcast, and I'm smiling from ear to ear because I am talking today to the big right-hander, Chris Ebel, who is, again, somehow no one told me about the meeting at the Fountain of Youth. He's looking just the same pretty much as he did when he was taking the mound for Brock. Ebes, Ebes, how are you, man? It's been a long time.
I'm doing great, Mike. Yeah, thanks a lot. It's really good to see you. Honestly, this has been fantastic. Like, just catching up with the guys and the stories and watching this stuff. And, you know, I give you a lot of credit for doing this with everyone. I unfortunately haven't been able to keep in touch with most of anyone really, without, you know, being on social media and that kind of stuff. But this has been just fantastic, you know, reminiscing about some of the stories and getting to see everyone again. So kudos to you for doing this.
Well, I said this on a podcast that is yet to be published, but, you know, everyone tends to beat themselves up because you're like, kind of like, wow, you know, there's some great guys and I haven't been in touch with them. You know, the reality is life happens, eh? You have kids, you have a job, you know, you do all those things, and it kind of interferes a little bit. But these are great excuses, especially as our kids are getting older, to kind of reconnect and come back together. So I am definitely looking forward to seeing you in about 6.5 months time. But why don't you tell everybody what you're up to these days?
Yeah, so after school, I went back to KW and got hired on with Warley Regional Police. So I've been a police officer now for 25 years. Did a few years on patrol on that, and then spent a good chunk of 15 years on the emergency response team. So it's like the SWAT team in Ontario. So did that. We're specialized in, you know, I was a team leader for 8 years, bomb tech, specialized in explosives and some other things. And then after that, it was kind of succession planning. They're like, hey, you got to get promoted. So I got promoted to sergeant, and now I'm one of the sergeants running our training branch. So it's been great 25 years. I got about 4.5 to go, and I can golf every day, and that's it. That's the plan, anyways. We'll see. We'll see if it happens, but
it's amazing. Yeah. You thought you would, you know, like, it's a kind of a form of coaching that you're in professionally. So that must, you know, be pretty rewarding when you see people learning and you know, understanding a more sensible and applied way of approaching policing.
Yeah, 100%. Like we're in charge of the training for every officer, whether it's brand new recruits we work with before they go to police college, when they get back from the police college. Every officer that comes through training, they have to do it annually, you know, for use of force training, like whether that's shooting or ground fighting or all kinds of different things. And it's fantastic. And like, my time on the TAC team was awesome. It was just like playing sports again. Like, it was a tight group of guys that we got time to work out every day, you eat together, you got the best calls, the best time, awesome training. And then it was just like super tight group of guys that are kind of having the most fun and doing the best calls there. So I loved it. Yeah.
Did they wonder why you were waiting for, you know, you would start shaking near the end because you thought Coach McRae was going to come out and start making you run sprints at the end of, at the end of one of your missions there?
Yeah. No, that never really happened, but wouldn't put it past them.
Well, Chris, why don't we I mean, a lot of people won't know your backstory prior to there being a Brock team because you're so identified as being, the guy there in terms of taking the mound and stuff. Where'd you grow up, and tell us a little bit about that in your early days of getting into sports? Because I know you're quite a hockey player as well.
Yeah, so I grew up in Kitchener, born and raised here. My family was all from here and stayed here. My dad was heavily into sports, like whether it was hockey or baseball and golf. So he got me in everything. And dad, like, he loved baseball. He was good at hockey too, but he played for years in the inter-county. He signed professionally with Kansas City Athletics before they moved to Oakland, right? So like he was a hell of a ball player, and I kind of took after my dad, I guess, and just loved the game. So I played ball growing up, played hockey as well, AAA growing up for Kitchener. And at the time, it was just, get through high school. We didn't have a high school baseball here, but I was playing junior and senior inter-county, a couple years younger. So I had some good experiences before even getting to Brock. And then it just so happened that, they ended up starting that ball team. You started the team, and the rest is kind of history, right? I was just lucky that right time, right place, I was there. Didn't even think there was going to be ball at school. And if anything, I was like, all right, well, after the first year, maybe I'll try out for the hockey team and see how it goes once I've kind of got my feet set and the kind of dust settled a little bit. And luckily, there was ball. So I loved it, thanks to you. Yeah.
So let's. Do you remember what led to the decision to go to Brock University? I mean, you would have had to pick three schools at that time, and thank God you didn't go to U of T. But
no, U of T was not on the radar. Western, Waterloo, and Brock was where I applied. I got into all of them. Kind of at the time, actually, I owe it to my dad. He was like, hey, you got to get out of town and get away from your mom and kind of grow up a little bit, right? Mom was a grade 1 teacher, and very much like your typical grade 1 teacher, like, street lights are on, you had to be home. She, a little naive, even through my career in policing, she had no idea really what I was doing. And it wasn't until there was that show Flashpoint when dad's like, that's what Chris does, right? And she had no idea. And then it scared the life out of her when I told her I had to go to Ottawa for, 5 weeks to be a bomb technician, right? So, so dad was, like, get out of town, go grow up, have fun. I visited the campus and just really liked it. I didn't know a lot of people that were coming from my high school going to Brock. So I was like, hey, this is going to be a great time. It ended up that I did actually have my roommate just out of residence ended up being from the same high school. I didn't even know he was going to Brock. So it was just kind of a coincidence, really. And like once I visited the area, it was hour and a half or like an hour and 15 from KW. Close enough that I could go home on weekends, far enough that I didn't have to, right? And it was just best decision on that I think I ever did.
Yeah, I think Todd Nye said it on his podcast. He loved being able to take his laundry home. That was his big thing.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Do you remember what residence you're in, and what was res life like for you? Because I think this is an understated part of the university experiences people should have a good understanding of.
Yeah, so my first year, I was in DeQ, which is the one right on campus there. And I shared a room with a guy from high school, and residence was awesome. Like I loved it because you had your meals made, you're right on campus. You walk to class in flip-flops if you wanted in the wintertime. The gym's there, like everything was there for you, right? So I always obviously not everyone can be in residence, and I get that. And especially now with the cost of it is ridiculous, right? So you definitely experience more of the university kind of culture and lifestyle, getting the opportunity to be in res. I got a lot of friends, kids that, maybe are in town, staying at home, going to school. They just miss out on the social aspect of it, which is a huge part of university, right? Is, the socializing. But res was awesome. So did that for 2 years. And then we got a house and we're in Thorold, not far from like Fletch and Dix and those guys. We were like a block away from them.
Oh my goodness, the real estate values in Thorold went south during that era. I'm just letting you know.
Because they had a batting cage and they were smashing balls all the time. That's all you could hear all night.
So, do you remember what you were taking? What course were you taking?
Yeah, so I started in phys ed and then switched to health studies, which then became health science. Originally, I wanted to be a teacher. I was going to be a teacher and even looked at a teacher's college. You know, and I was like, all right, well, maybe that's kind of an avenue I was going to take. With at the time, my mom, who was a teacher, she was like, hey, there's a good chance that they are not going to have summers off anymore. And that was a huge draw, right? So I was like, all right, well, I don't want to be a teacher then. So she goes, it's really going to change. And my uncle was a police officer. At the end there, I was kind of working in the Students' Union. My last year after I had graduated, I stayed around and worked in the Students' Union. And I became really good friends with one of the campus police officers, Mila, that she was seconded. There was 2 seconded officers from Niagara Police Service. And it was just always talking to Mila about policing and that. And she really helped me, you know, get in, like really through the process. So, yeah, almost like a mentor, right? She was for me. And it was just, you know, I applied back in Waterloo, applied in Niagara. I also applied with like Niagara Fire Department or St. Catharines there. And I was just like, I was interested in, right? I like the emergency services. I like that and trying to help people and do, you know, the typical answers you want to do in an interview, right? I'm here to help people, not hurt them, right?
There's only one excuse to hurt someone, and that involves hitting someone in the ribs when you're 60 feet 6 inches away from them.
Yeah, exactly. It happens. Yeah.
Do you remember? Do you remember your? So you're clearly one of the people that came and signed up at the table in Thistle.
Yep.
Do you remember? Like Colin admitted in his podcast that he thought it was like a club where we were playing fantasy baseball or getting together and drinking beer and watching Jays games. Do you remember? You know what caught your attention, and I remember your name being one of the ones in that big blue binder I had with the 160 people. But do you remember that process of making the decision to sign up?
I just remember seeing the table, seeing the kind of sign or banner and talking with someone. I don't know whether it was you, whether it was Ted, whether it was someone else. And I was just like, hey, what is this? I want in. Are we actually going to play teams? And you're like, someone was like, yep, we are. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. Right. And that was it. You know, I didn't know how good we were going to be. I sure didn't expect that. You know, I was like, hey, I'm at school. Let's play. Let's have fun and play some ball. Right.
Yeah, at that time there were only 4 teams in Canada, but we had always had the intention of, because of the proximity to the border, to be a little bit going on both sides and playing a little bit more robust schedule. And thankfully it grew in Canada too. U of T came in and George Brown, which we all can kind of laugh about now in retrospect. I feel bad for the poor George Brown team, but you know, there were other teams that started that year, Queens and a few others.
Yeah.
Chris, so then that would obviously bring us to the winter workouts and everyone's crazy, bizarre experience with that. Do you remember, you know, the few things that I remember was there was a lot of people in the gym and we had way more people come out than we thought we would. We had about 160 people. And we'd cut that down very quickly. What do you remember about the gym workouts? And you would have quickly been sequestered upstairs to the ballet studio where we all were horrified as people threw balls through the wall. What do you remember about the indoor workouts?
Yeah, I remember there being a lot of people. I remember, you know, going in and, you know, just, throwing upstairs. I don't really, like we were throwing footballs around for, you know, and heavy balls and different stuff in there. You know, there's just a lot going on. Guys are hitting and balls are flying all over the place and throwing off walls. And, you know, there's a lot, but, yeah, I remember, you know, going upstairs and, tossing and, you know, not much more, honestly, just, you know, throwing and yeah, just that's it.
Well, we quickly had Coach Topping, right? Like Tim was part of the
Yep.
indoor workouts, and I think that gave us a bit of an advantage. And the other thing I remember is there was like a core of maybe 7, 8, 9 guys that could pitch, and then the rest, it was a huge drop off. There were guys who could throw really hard, but they were wild as what. And
Yep.
so I think fairly quickly it became pretty evident to us who was good and who wasn't. And there wasn't the same competition as there was at other spots where they might have. I remember at catcher, there were like 6 catchers and 6 first basemen coming out of that. Well, maybe
Yep.
not 6, but they had at least 4 first basemen coming out of the winter workouts.
Yep. There's a lot.
And, you know, they're just, there wasn't that depth in pitching for sure. I never felt that we were so deep that, you know, someone good was going to get cut, funny enough. And Coach McRae may argue with me, but I just never felt pressured from that perspective. It's kind of like, wow, that guy can't hit a catcher from 10 feet away, never mind 60 feet away.
Right.
But there were some great guys out of that mix, and we quickly had to start doing tons of conditioning. I don't remember all that damn stairs we had to run. We were running every practice and doing towel drills while everyone else was kind of in and out. And
Yep.
I was never in better shape than that. We were running constantly. Remember how much bloody stuff we had to do compared to playing in summer ball, where you kind of run a few foul poles, you throw a bit, and then you shag flies, right?
Yep. No, 100%. The conditioning, you know, was huge. The towel drills and just all the running and everything that we were doing, right? So, like the towel, I've never seen that. I actually afterwards, like, brought that back and, you know, I got asked to do some coaching clinic with Kitchener Minor Baseball like years ago, and working with pitchers and stuff. And I was like, hey, let's do this, you know, and worked on all the things that we would do, like break down the mechanics, you know, and just really break down each specific movement and the purpose of it. And, you know, the towel drill. Like we ran our asses off, you know, and that's, there's no doubt about it. Right.
Todd said that when he went back, because his daughter is on the Brock varsity swim team, he walked by those stairs and he looked up at it and he just did a bit of a shudder. I'm like, he says, I remember running those damn stairs forever. Before we get into the summer before we launched the program, you know, I think a good question for everybody is, you know, just to have a little bit of fun is, where were your favorite, you know, campus or non-campus bars? We all kind of had that routine, and we're pretty into our social lives before there was a baseball team, and that quickly put a kibosh on everything. But did you have a favorite spot?
Well, I mean, Isaac's on campus there was big. Was it Arizona's down the road from there?
Smart Alex, right across.
Smart Alex?
Yeah, Smart Alex was in that hotel thing right across from.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that one. And then, but there was one that was down the road. Like you drove, there's a golf course across the street from it. It seemed like it was out a ways down a road. I think it was called Arizona's. Had a big patio. It was huge in the summertime. So at the time, my girlfriend, she lived in Niagara Falls. So I was back here all the time on the summer and, you know, weekends and stuff like that. So we would do a lot of that, you know, the front 54. We'd go over to the States all the time, right? Like in that for the cheap drinks. It was like Bedrocks. It was like $5. And the Pleasure Dome was there. And I think it was like all you can drink for $5 or $10. You know, it's crazy.
Unbelievable. I forgot all about the Pleasure Dome, but, you know, like it's, we all have our experiences that, you know, it's a different time now. My kids are both in university, and kids are not the same. They don't have that wheel of, okay, it's Wednesday, you know, it's front 54 night, or Thursday, it's Isaac's. They just don't have that same kind of dedication. We were very dedicated to both school and to making sure we were out and about. So it's
Yeah,
kind of a fun time, and it's hard with my
for
kids
sure.
because they're on me all about the time. You used to drink, Dad. I'm like, yeah, but there's no proof of it. So like
There's no
it's
proof. Thank God. We didn't have cell phones then, right? Like, I mean, we
oh,
had phones, but we didn't use them like the way they do now. Like,
no,
and thank God there was no social media. There was no cell phones. You just went out. You
yeah,
got home when you got home and no one could get a hold of you. It was perfect.
and you had a good time without having to shoot selfies constantly or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Um, so between the so you go through and you're playing. You're playing in Kitchener again in the summer prior to the first training camp,
Yep. Yeah. I was
and
playing, well, yeah, probably playing senior for the Panthers, like inter county. And yeah, I think, yeah, for sure. I was either that or junior or both, right? I was, yeah.
baseball heavy summer, and
Yes.
you know,
Yep. I was
it's
working, like I had a job with the city during the day, beer store as well. And then I was going to the ballpark. And like, I don't know if it was that summer, but I remember being at the park every night because at one point I was playing, on 2 or 3 teams. And even if I'd get there late, I'd be like, all right, you're pitching the 8th and 9th. And that was it. Right. And then maybe a couple days later, I'm starting. And it was just, yeah, like constantly at the ballpark. But that was just, we didn't get tired. Right. Like now
no,
I think about that and I'm exhausted, but we would go play ball, go out after, and back working at 7 in the morning. Like there were some days I'd work at 7 in the morning till like 4, beer store from 4:30 to 8:30 to the ballpark, and then out and do it again. And now, Christ, I'm sleeping by 10 o'clock every night and passed out on the couch.
yeah, I think that's par for the course. I mean, when the clocks went forward the other day, I was like, this can't be happening. I'm losing an hour of sleep, and
Yes,
I need it.
yeah, like it
like it's
totally affects you.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yep.
So, had you? I mean, we'll talk about Steve Vatour and his coming onto the Brock team at camp. Was he a teammate of yours in that summer?
Yes.
And okay,
Yeah. So all the time, like growing up, Steve was a year older than me, but we always played together. Like, so I'd known Steve for years, and a good buddy of mine. And then, so the first year when we didn't have a team, he was going to Macomb, who actually we ended up playing against.
yeah,
But he was down there for a year, and then he left that school. And I honestly, I kind of don't really remember exactly how it happened, but I was just like, hey, you're not going back there. Why don't you come to Brock? We got a team now. We're going to play this year, and we're going to, it'll be fun. And he jumped at it and did it. So yeah, like that's kind of how it happened. It wasn't like a huge recruiting thing or anything like
no,
that. I was just like, hey, I knew he'd make it, right? Like it didn't
yeah,
matter. Like he's so versatile between like being a good stick and speed and pitching and field, like everything. He could do anything. So it was like, yeah, bring him and let's have fun, right? That's it.
yeah. That's it's funny though, and I will say this, right? For the population size of Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, if you think of that area, the fact that we really in that first year only had a couple players from there is really odd to me, right?
Yep.
Like, I mean, we had a bazillion Burlington guys and we had 5 Oshawa guys. Now, part of that is a pipeline that starts, but um, I think the lack of high school baseball is probably one of the contributing factors there. They needed to be at that time. It was pretty heavy in the province, so there were a lot of people playing in other parts of the province. So that's interesting to hear that.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. And I never really thought about it that much at the time. Other than, like we've got basically 3 universities right here between Waterloo, Laurier, and Guelph, right? Like Guelph's 5 minutes down the highway, not maybe more than 5, but at least in my age group in school, a lot of kids either went to Waterloo or Western, and that was a huge draw. So it was like, all right, well, I didn't want to go there, and I was more than happy to go to St. Catharines. So yeah, it was worked out.
Thank God you didn't go to Guelph either. You'd have had to wear those horrid uniforms, the black and red things. Like, Jesus.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the first day of training camp and what, we had all gone through the gym workouts where we got cut down from 160 people down to about 35. And then we show up at camp and we're back up to 50 pretty quickly with a whole bunch of new recruits. Do you remember what you were thinking during the early days of training camp?
Basically, I was just so kind of impressed at how organized everything was, how there was so many different things going on at one time, right? Like, it wasn't like your traditional, okay, guys, you're going to take BP and everyone's just out shagging flies and you got a couple guys chucking off on the mound, like there's a lot of stuff happening, right? And all over the field. You really had to kind of have your head on a swivel because, you could get hit at any time doing something, right? But so, yeah, there was a lot going on. It was so organized. And it was so, I don't want to say like demanding, but it was like crisp, if that makes any sense, right? Like everything was done for a purpose and it was done properly. And the guys, the players, they were really good, right? Like we brought in some great guys and it was way better than what I thought it would be, and then that's kind of what I remember the most, right? And we worked our asses off.
Yeah. Were you on the winning or losing team of having to do that GD duck walk thing? Did you have to do the duck walk all the way around the field?
I don't remember that. So I think I won. Honestly, there's a lot of stuff that you guys have been talking about, and I'm like, I don't remember that. You
clearly were on the winning team. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I must have. I remember running a hell of a lot of foul poles.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What were your first impressions of Coach McRae? Because I think training camp we would have had some exposure to him at the tail end of the winter workouts, but we would have seen his act fully in action now. And a little bit about what your relationship was like with Mike. I mean, I think he had a lot of respect for you, clearly, and he's one of the guys that he really leaned on, because I think,
I love Coach. Like, honestly, he there's no doubt about it. He was hard, but I totally had the utmost respect for him. It was like you knew where you stood with him. Everyone did all the time. There was no hiding anything. He called a spade, and I admire that about people. You're not always going to hear what you want to hear. And sometimes, it's hard, but that's life. Right. And I love Mike. I love our coach. I love working for him, and honestly, he was hard on everyone, but I would have done anything for him. Like, I would run through a wall for the guy, and it was just one of those things that it's like, hey, you want me to throw on 3 days rest? Okay, I'll do it. Right. And whatever he wanted, it was, I had a great relationship with him. And I think, it was just, I respected the hell out of him,
Yeah. Do you remember your dealings with Daryl Kemp? I think
there's another guy. So first time with Kemp, right? I didn't know him that well. And he's like, hey, he goes, Ebel. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, is your dad Gary Ebel? And I go, yeah. And he goes, he was a hell of a ball player. And I go, yeah, I heard that. He goes, I hit more home runs than him. He goes, give me a shoe. And that's what he says, right? And I'm just like, okay, and he's like, all right, let's have a chew. And so no, Kemp was great. He's another guy that was really didn't beat around the bush, he was good at just saying certain things, right? Like, it's like, hey, and I mean, it wasn't his role. Like, I mean, he's a coach and it's not like he's the pitching coach, but he'd just grab me sometimes and he'd be like, you're getting too fancy. Just throw the ball. He goes, you got a great defense. Let them play, and he's like, just throw the ball, throw strikes, throw the ball, work hard, work ahead. That's it. Right. And he's like, just make it simple. And, just little things like that, right? Like, give you a lot of confidence, or he's kind of like, I'm not saying like a mental motivator in that sense of, but he knew what to say. and he did motivate you, but it wasn't like he's playing mind tricks or anything like that. Like you get some coaches that, they want to screw with your head. He was honestly, he's just a straight up guy that, and just a wealth of knowledge, and it just hilarious, right? Like just his one-liners and his dry sense of humor. And, I could, obviously we did spend a lot of time just sitting around. I don't mean like at practice or not working, but hey, when you're not throwing, you're there for a doubleheader and it's like you're there all day, right? And so we'd spend a lot of time just talking, and like I loved it. Like I could just sit and talk with all the coaches and it was great.
Yeah, I think Daryl had a really good relationship with the 3 senior guys on the team. I played with him in the summer, so that was freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
I got to pitch against him, which was not so hilarious because he could still swing it. But
I went back like after the first year and still played, a few more years, and some of the older guys that they were still playing. Like I played with some of the guys that played for like 15, 20 years in the intercounty. And they remember Daryl, and they're like, oh my God, he's your coach. Like he's awesome. Right. So it was kind of funny, in that sense that, it just goes full circle. Right.
Ebes, you should have lined up and tried to get him out. I made the, I tried it in Niagara and I got all cocky because I threw him a fastball in the outside corner and he swung over it. But like Daryl Wood, he said, that was a great changeup. And I was like super pissed off.
Yeah.
Then I was like, screw you, I'm going to throw this one even harder. And predictably, he ripped it into right on but nowhere in about 10 feet. It was just a line shot into right.
Just a rocket. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, yeah, okay. It's great to hear those two. Obviously, we're all going to have a different perspective on Tim Topping. The infielders and the outfielders didn't really deal with Tim that much. But I loved Tim for any number of reasons. Mostly because I'm a totally different pitcher than you are. You're pretty composed out there and pretty focused. I'm like it
wasn't always. Yeah.
Yeah, but tell me about Tim and kind of he's a different touch than McRae for sure. What was it like pitching for Tim?
Yeah, like really, that's the first real person that I had really break down mechanics the way he did. And, just going over and over and over good mechanics and why you need them, right? Like, it's not just about, throwing hard and stuff like that. It was really working on mechanics and then being a better, like being smarter, right? Setting things up, like working, 2-3 pitches ahead kind of thing, that everything has a purpose, right? And I really enjoyed, he was like working with him. He was so calm. He was a great pitching coach.
Yeah, I still laugh every time I think of Tim coming to the mound. I think of Bob Marley playing in the background.
Yeah. Remember he'd come to practice, right? And he just kind of, sometimes it seemed like he was just, joking around and he's just calm and having fun and just wanted to be with the guys, right? And it was awesome,
Yeah, it's because he looked like Tom Berenger a little bit from Major League, so he reminded me of the catcher.
Yeah.
And then I would think, but he's like Jimmy Buffett. It's 5 o'clock somewhere in Tim's world, and he's helping me kind of get to that place.
For sure. He's having a margarita. You know that.
Still is. He's still playing hockey 4 nights a week, if you can believe that.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. So out of training camp, Steve Vittor joins, and his nickname is Gypsy. How did he end up with the nickname Gypsy? How did that come to be?
I don't know, like whether that was just Stevie kind of, being always not really setting roots anywhere and just bouncing around. And, he was always looking for somewhere to crash or someone to give him a little extra cash or, hey, take these empties back and grab some beers for you, Yeah. Well,
I could just see him driving around in one of those wagons like in the movies. It's great.
Yeah.
So he comes in and he's, a really key addition because, I'll do respect. The guy was a star shortstop and was a position that we were struggling filling. We had great infielders, but they were more second base, third base types.
Yep.
And obviously we had a collection of first basemen that is unparalleled because we had 4 of them.
Yeah, that's right. Like, yeah. Do you remember like in tryouts even? Because I asked coach, I'm like, hey, can I take some at first? And he's like, you can if you want, but we got a whole bunch of guys there, right? And I was like, fair enough. I'll just pitch then. He goes, yeah, why don't you just do that? He's like, get rid of the sunglasses too. No pitcher wears those, right? I'm like, okay, whatever.
I do remember you wearing those dark shades and you guys had the Macomb jackets. I was like, yeah, that might earn him one in the ribs if he gets the wrong guy out there. But the funny part is, in one of an ironic twist, Ebel, you led our first. I had to redo the stats for 95, and you're 1 for 1 with a slugging percentage of 2,000. So you can flex that and say you should have played me more.
No, they gave me one at bat because we did. I don't remember. It was some practice. It was a fun thing, right? And it was like, all right, let's have a home run contest. And I was decent in BP. Like I would always take BP even as a pitcher. I was like, I want to just get some balls. And, I could hit a fastball, not the curveball. Okay. But the fastball I could hit. So, yeah, I guess I made a deal that if I won the home run derby, then I would get to, have an at bat. So they followed through on it. And, I got one at bat. That was it.
Good for you, though, man. You got a hit. Default. So that's
one by default.
And I don't want anything to do with an at bat. So I admire the fact that you can swing it.
I just couldn't hit.
Well, I didn't want to hit because they left-handers, they keep far away from the batter's box to begin with, but I had earned a little bit of a reputation for being a bit of a headhunter. Okay, let's clarify that. I wasn't a headhunter. I was a ribs under the numbers hunter.
Yep.
You're told to hit people. So they're like, in Oshawa, they were like, Mike, if Mike is out there, and it was another guy that came under this rule, first off, they're never allowed to hit. Second of all, if they hit someone with the ball, don't tackle the guy before he gets there. Throw the ball back so they can hit them again before they get there. That's just absolute coaching advice we got. So, I didn't ever want to hit because I just thought I'm going to get it square between the numbers, right? So, interesting. Tell me a little bit about, I don't think there would have been any feelings if you're not making the team or anything like that. Do you recall the day that we finally got our jerseys and said about the, and what were your impressions of relationships that you would develop in camp that would carry on into the season? Just maybe a few characters that may have rubbed up against you a little bit.
Yeah, no, honestly, like I remember like all the guys were awesome. I don't know who said it on another one of these podcasts that you've done, Mike, but like the team just gelled together, right? Like there was obviously competition for certain spots that, guys were doing. And and there's always and that's friendly competition, but it's amongst teammates, right? It's kind of like now you got the NHL teams and you got a goalie 1 and 1B, right? Like it's not just, hey, I'm the starter and you're my second fiddle, right? And the guys, we really did get along and gel. And it's kind of upsetting and hard for me that I didn't keep in touch with anyone or everyone because of how close we were. Like it was such a good group of guys. And obviously, we performed incredibly well. We had a way better season than I would have thought, and just the team itself was like outstanding talent, the guys that came in and the guys that were there. Right. So yeah, like it was awesome.
Yeah, it was. And it's a good time to jump into it because as a pitcher, you would draw usually the first game of the doubleheaders against the American teams a lot of times. And, I'd like to dispel this myth now because it's one thing that's come up a couple of times. I felt we were competitive even in games that we would lose by a lot of runs with the American teams because it wasn't a talent issue. A lot of times it was a couple reasons. Playing in an aluminum bat era is really hard as a pitcher.
Yep.
And second of all, there was some shoddy umpiring along the way because they didn't want to lose to us. But I felt that our games against the American D1 schools in particular, we showed a lot of spirit and could have easily won a bunch of those games. But just tell me what it was like pitching against the American teams, because you drew a lot of those, particularly the first half of a doubleheader starts to calm everyone down.
Honestly, like, I knew that was the case, like, early on. The Mike and like the coaches were like, you're not gonna pitch that much against our league like teams, like you'll see them in playoffs, you'll see them later on, but this is better for you and the program to throw against the better schools, and we gotta do it this way. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. I didn't care, and I never thought anything about it. I was just like, yeah, that's no problem, and I wasn't, I had some buddies in that played against different schools and that before. I knew that, we were in for a good battle, but it wasn't like intimidating or anything, or I wasn't thinking that, we were going to get our, I was just thrown out to the wolves kind of thing. Like, it's like I said, we had an awesome defense, and I didn't have to feel like I had to be on my best all the time. Like, sometimes just letting them hit the ball, we were getting outs, right? And, that, sometimes like you feel before the game starts, you feel like, oh my God, I'm going to have the best game ever. And you're just getting hammered out there. And then there's other games where you're like, my shit is terrible today. And you end up throwing like a one or no hitter, and it's just one of those things that sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. You can't have your A game every game. You want to, as a competitor in that, you want to always bring your best. But I have no problems at all, wanting or being told to throw, against any team. Right. So I always wanted the ball.
I think that attitude really worked its way down, and you had a lot of guys that were stepped up. A lot of people had their best year at Brock, which is great. You were also, I think that U of T probably has a poster of you up somewhere where they're like, if you with a bounty to have you jailed for games because U of T couldn't beat you. Tell me a little bit about which was great because they had all that all those left-handed pitchers, so it was always a tough game.
Yeah,
but those were really intense games that you pitched against U of T because you had to. We weren't going to score a lot of runs off their pitching, no matter how good our offense was. They had those two lefties that were really good. Tell me a little bit about your memories of playing the U of T Blues.
I remember like a couple of the guys that we had some good battles with. But honestly, most of all, I remember coach, right? Like Rick Johnson was the coach. So he also had played in the intercounty. I don't remember him from that. He might have been a bit before me, but I remember talking to him before one of the games. And again, he brings up my dad, right? And talks about him. And then a couple of times, like, he was just, a great, respectful coach that we would have a little friendly banter back and forth. I didn't know him that well, but I just remember always kind of like, at one point, he'd walk past me and he'd be like, hey, we're going to get your B game one time. And then like the next inning, he's like, guess it's not today. Right. And like, that was just kind of the joking around that we had, I always, I remember it just being like a good rivalry and a good competition against them. As far as specific, one-on-one battles with certain players, I don't remember that. But the coach definitely stood out, to me.
Yeah. And, so we go through the season. We have a very good season. And do you have any specific memories of traveling to the U.S. Like we talked a little bit about before the podcast about you and I must have been in the same group of people that were at the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, just kind of walking through the town and thinking, where's the apple pie wafting out of like, it was like
Yeah.
picket fences and,
Yeah. 100%.
But I don't really remember the buckshot in the outfield or anything like that.
No, I don't remember that at all. I don't, but I remember being in town, walking around. I've been there before with my dad, so I've been to the Hall of Fame, been to the park, but yeah, I don't remember. I remember a lot of really, really long bus trips, right? Or like the van rides. And especially when, we're going somewhere and you're not starting, like you just threw the day before and it's like, all right, well, here's, a 4-hour drive, a double header, a 4-hour drive. I'm like, how much chew am I going to need today? Like it was a lot. Right. But, looking back, I love it, like the smell of the field, the sound, the spikes running up the, concrete stairs, right? Like just, those are the little things that you miss. And even when like you see it now, or you're at the ballpark, you go to the Dome or any park, right? And you just see the guys and, like it, the American trips, they were great. I remember some of the schools. I don't remember all of them. But yeah, definitely like St. Bonaventure, going down there. And like someone said, like you got the mountains in the background and there's a cabin with like a fire going on. And it's just like, seems like some whiskey commercial, like it should just be, yeah, it's great.
It's funny you bring it up. It is the one thing that I miss the most is the sound of spikes on, like it's, of all the things too, as a pitcher, it could be any number of things. We all love starting the game off with throwing a fastball right on the corner and the umpire calling strike one. Everyone kind of has some memories of those types of things, but
the snap of the leather, right? Like the pop. Yeah.
Well, some of us could pop the glove.
You couldn't anymore.
So Chris, what do you remember about, Montreal and the Nationals? Did you drive down in one of for some reason I thought we took a bus, but apparently we went in the vans, and I don't really remember that. So clearly, like you and I were very close I think I would throw in between you and Garton all the time. So
yeah,
I sat the same damn double headers that you did. So I didn't pitch in Cooperstown, and I didn't pitch. Thank God I didn't pitch in St. Bonaventure. I would have killed the umpire. But that was a long trip to Montreal, and it was the referendum weekend. There were a bazillion buses on the road. What do you remember about Montreal specifically?
I just remember it being like everyone said, it was a cold weekend. The weather was crap. Like at one point we were trying to actually find, and we were tossing around the idea of trying to use Olympic Stadium, right? Because the weather was so bad that they were trying to get in there to play some of the games. And then getting down there, I just remember, that my parents came down for the tournament. They came down with their good friends, and who at the time, he was the general manager of our team in Kitchener, the Panthers, and that, and had been, president of the Intercounty League, and him himself, like a tradition of baseball, and him just like, he was so impressed with how good the baseball was. Like he didn't know what he was coming down to watch. He's just like, hey, let's go to Montreal and watch, Chris and Steve play ball, right? And, that's kind of what he thought he was doing, and spending time with my parents, which they'd go on road trips, and do stuff before. But, like he was so impressed with how good the ball was and how good our team was. Right. And, like I remember, I think I threw against U of T in that, in the semis. And like I just knew we had to win, and that was it. Right. So it's kind of,
I have one small memory of the final. Other than, obviously lots of other ones. So it's not like I forget everything else. I remember a lot of things about the final, including Peter's doing his Lounsbury imitation in the clubhouse. But I do remember, Chris, that you and I went to McRae in the final game and said we're both able to throw. And it was one of those things where just Mike was such a hard believer in your, where you slotted and what you did, and didn't want to expose either of us to going out there and getting hurt because it was cold. And at the time I remember being upset about it, thinking like, we don't have a tomorrow.
Yeah.
But, I've come to respect in 30 years a guy with integrity, and Coach McRae has more integrity than any coach I've ever played with. Like I've had other ones that were skilled or great guys or whatever, but he just had that integrity where his word meant something, and his commitment to players meant something. If you had a role on the team, he wasn't going to just throw you out in the bathwater because a couple of the older pitchers come along and say, hey, we can throw today. I was a starting pitcher. There was no way I was going to see a mound in relief. You were the same, likely. I don't think we were going to get out there, even if we were needed, unless we got into extra innings and it went on for a while. But I've respected that. But I remember you and I both lobbying like crazy, saying, hey, we can go. And, you probably could if I could. And I pitched that, my arm was probably toast. So I was probably just faking it. But
I think, if I threw the semis, it was probably like just the game before the finals, same day, right? And it's like, all right, well, I can still go. They're only 7-inning games, and now with analytics, you don't get a starter that goes more than 6. But, back when we played, it was not uncommon to want to throw the whole 9 innings, right? Or go a complete game. So I was like, hey, I got through the 7 innings, we won. It's like, I can go again if you need, right? And
the one thing I discovered in the Tim Topping podcast was that the coaches were big proponents of pitch count, and so it was not likely. And I'm not a pitch count guy. I come from the same era that you do. It's like, I'll throw till my arm comes off. You have to shoot me to get me off this mound. And in retrospect, there were times where that probably, bit me in the ass, because you'd get tired, or I'd get a blister in particular from some of those experiences. I had a game in Oshawa that we had to chart pitches, and I threw 169 pitches in a game, which just meant I threw too many fucking balls is what that meant.
That's a lot. Yeah. No, I didn't really worry about a pitch count per se, and maybe in hindsight, like, I don't even think I could throw a snowball right now, but maybe that's why. I don't know. But,
well, interestingly enough, you continue on into the year 2. And so tell me a little bit about how difficult that was, because 9 of the 10 pitchers left, and 15 or 16 of the 24 players left. That must have been an incredible burden to carry, and a big, leadership void, because all the senior people are now gone and you're just the only one left. Tell me a little bit about what it was like going from year 1 to year 2, and with Lounsbury as a coach.
Yeah. Looking back, it didn't seem that bad. Like, obviously at first you're wondering, okay, you knew we lost a ton of guys, right? But they did an amazing job at bringing in guys. And, so once you got there and saw what they brought in, it was like, all right, this is fantastic. Sure, we didn't have the same guys, but, we knew that we were still going to be really, really good. So there wasn't like a tremendous amount of pressure. There was a really good core of guys that came back. And then all the new guys. So it was, I think it was, if you were to say that it was possible, to any other team, it'd be like, no, there's no way that you guys would be successful losing what we lost and the guys that we lost. And, you know, not only just losing numbers like that, but the character guys, right, that we lost. And whether it was pitchers or positional players or just sheer, you know, performers, right? But it happened because we brought in such great talent, you know, and it was the work ethic and the team kind of buy-in was there right from day one, right? So we already had that. We had the leadership from the senior guys that stuck around, and it was just, okay, let's continue and let's win again, you know. And it really happened like that easily, right?
Did you take on more of a leadership role on that pitching staff with I would assume that you're probably dealing with 9 or 10 freshmen, actually, probably fairly close. Although Dan Pino was a guy that was on the JV team that came up, but you have had mostly freshmen come up. And did that put you even into more of a leadership role? Because I think on our team, it was really 3 or 4. We had other guys. Teddy didn't see the mound a hell of a lot, but he was a good, solid leadership type dude. And, I think there was lots of people like Ron and Joel and to a certain extent Alex and Brad could go to, but you would have had most of that on your shoulders. And was it something you liked doing?
Yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, I didn't really honestly think that much about it at the time. I just, try to help the new guys out, and we had a good bond, right? Like they brought in some really, really good guys, Drew Arnold and Cheeseman and Fabio and Pearson, and we had a really good staff, right? And so to bring in all that talent and guys and everyone, there wasn't really issues. Like people wanted to win, they wanted to work hard, and I didn't really have to work at being a leader. We just came to the park and did what we had to do, right? Yeah.
Okay, here's a good one for you, though, before we kind of get into a few stories about some of the characters we played with. Chris, you threw an unusual pitch as one of your repertoire. You threw a bit of a knuckle curve as opposed to a standard curveball. Where did you learn that pitch, and why did you choose to go with it rather than a straight overhand curve?
I think I started doing that young, like really young. So we had a really good pitcher that was my age that I don't even know how old we were, but we were young. And he was throwing too many curveballs and blew his arm out. And it was like, all right, well, we need something. And someone showed me that. I don't remember who it was. One of the older guys that might have been helping out or working. And you know what? I was just able to do it. And later on, though, I had problems with it because I could only do it a little bit once my arm got tired. It was the first couple innings, it wasn't there. So I really had to develop, a better changeup and a slider to get me by rather than just, throwing a 2-seam and a 4-seam fastball. So, yeah, the knuckle curve, I probably will fletch a couple bottles or cases of whiskey for how many times I threw it in the dirt. And his knees are probably shot just because of having to catch me, But, at times it was very effective. And, yeah.
Yeah, I felt bad. Well, I felt bad for our catchers because you had that knuckle curve that hit the dirt a lot. And Ron Strow, I love Ron, but he must have been a disaster to catch because he had the arms and legs all over the place. And he threw also a kind of some sort of slider, or a really hard curveball, and it bounced a lot. So they would get the hell beat out of them. And then, we would, we weren't easy. I think maybe Rob was maybe easier on the catch. Like Rob was a pretty standard fastball, curveball, changeup guy, and didn't bounce the ball a hell of a lot, compared to the rest of us who, in your case, you're bouncing that knuckle curve, and Tour's case, he's throwing that slider in the dirt.
Yeah.
In my case, I just had the fastball that would go all over the place. It was, it's interesting though to hear because I've only played with 2 people who threw that pitch, and you're one of them. So I'm just wondering where you picked it up.
I wish I could give someone credit or blame someone really, but anyways, but yeah, honestly, throwing, like, you never wanted to throw it and leave it hanging, so we'd always throw it low. And one of the biggest things I learned right from McRae and Topping was you're up 0-2, and if you give up a hit, we were running, and we were running for the entire practice, right? And even to this day, I still watch, some Jays games, and they're up 0-2 and they give up a hit, and I'm like, oh my God, Mike would lose his mind, So it's that was the huge lesson, right? Like, it's either high and inside or it's low and in the dirt, right? And nothing gets hit. Like, even a foul ball, I remember, getting the look in, from Mike, right? And he'd just stand on that dugout and just shake his head, and he'd be like, you knew, I'm not doing that again. There's no way, right? Yeah.
You can take that entire group of 10 of us, and we will all say the same thing: 0-2, fastball high and tight, or curveball in the dirt. And I never stopped doing that after Brock. I did that, just stayed there.
Always.
It was
always
like a tattoo. It's amazing. So earlier you're telling me you have a kind of a Larry Houston story, which is always tons of fun. I love Houston stories.
Yeah. He was a beauty.
Tell me a little bit about Louis.
I remember one game, and I don't remember whether it was like U at T or Mac or somebody, right? And I was throwing and kind of gave up like a single that the guy stretched into a double, and he's standing on second base and he's cheering, trying to get his guys going, right? Like, come on, guys, we can do this or whatever, right? And I just remember Larry going over and saying it loud enough that I heard it, right? And he's just basically like, hey, shut the fuck up, put your hands down. And he goes, I guarantee you're not scoring, right? And that was kind of like, and the guy kind of looked at him, and Larry's like, yeah. And I think he was ready to deck him, that he was kind of showboating, right? But it was just funny. Like, yeah, they were all the guys, like, you just knew that they had your back no matter what, even when you weren't having your best stuff, they would carry you through. And, we had such a good offense too, that some days you didn't have to have your best stuff. And like Kemp would say, just let them hit the ball, and you got a wicked defense out there, and it's not all about striking guys out, right? You can get through an inning, on 6-7 pitches and end up throwing all 7, right? So
yeah, I played on a lot of teams after Brock, and I never played with an outfield defense like that. Those guys could all run and throw, and between Nish and Wright and Daryl Houston and Bots, we'd win games in the warm up because they'd look at the way they were throwing. And I remember just freaking out. I think we freaked out some pretty good teams. I mean, the lesser teams, the Guelphs and the George Browns of the world, like, they weren't going to win anyway. But, a couple of the better teams, U of T and Durham College in particular, I think got freaked out at how we looked in warm up. And that was, I think, tough for them to get. It was kind of like us the first time we saw an American D1 team, where our hitters in particular would get a little bit intimidated by the scene, or the big right-handers throwing fastball slider on the mound. They'd freeze up a little bit, and then that's enough for the other team to get the jump. So interesting from that perspective. Tell me a little bit about
100%. Like,
yeah.
No, like 100%. You can intimidate guys, and I think we did that. Like the amount of hustle and speed and that we showed in warm-ups, right? Just everything. Like I said before, like, everything was just crisp. Everything was sharp. We looked good. We hustled on and off the field. There was some, maybe some attitude at times, right? But for the most part, like, we were just really, worked our asses off, and it was like really professional, and that probably did intimidate guys, and like.
Amazing. So, Chris, tell me a little bit about how your Brock career ends up, and what your voyage looks like after you're done the baseball program, you've talked a little bit about working for BUSU and developing a love for policing during it. But tell me a little bit about how your career wraps up, and then kind of what's next for you. Do you continue to play ball? Do you go back to KW? Those kinds of things.
Yeah, so I played then for the next couple of years at Brock, and the last year I graduated, didn't quite know what I wanted to do as far as a career. At the time, my girlfriend, that she still had one more year. I had some buddies that were in the students union and that were leaving, and they're like, "Hey, why don't you run for a position and work here? You gain a whole bunch of experience and different things." So I did that. In hindsight, not prepared for what I was getting into. I really shouldn't probably have won that position, but it happened. But it was a fantastic learning experience. So I did that. Still a little bit around the team, and not as like a coach or anything like that, but I'd still help out here and there and come around and just hang out with the guys and be there for a little bit. And then, I got into policing in 99. So I still played in the inter-county till 2002. 2001 was my last year that I played. So I played 3 more years in the inter-county. We ended up winning a couple championships and beat Guelph in the finals and Toronto in the finals in 1 year. And then in 2002, I got on our tactical team, and I was just like, okay, I'm done. Like I can't be throwing a ball and then the next day trying to, do something else and everything that we had to do. So, and it got to the point too that later on, when you're not throwing every day, like you're not in shape, right? Like your arm's weak. Like physically, I was in great shape at the time, or at least for me, I was in good shape. But at the time, because I was running all the time and doing other things, but it was, your arm's not in shape, so then I would only go to the park and throw on certain days, and it just wasn't good. And then you'd be sore for days after, and, it was completely different. So then I ended up, leaving baseball, I guess, or playing my last year. And, then since then, I've just not really gotten back into it, and helped out a little bit with some other kind of coaching clinics, or had some just going out to practices or some other things like that, but not involved in baseball now. So busy with life.
Life is good from that
Life
perspective.
is busy.
Yeah. Tell me about being a family guy and what that what's obviously you put your roots down where you started. So I assume that that life has been pretty consistent in terms of just environment for you.
I'd say maybe inconsistent.
Okay.
No, I'm joking. You know what? I've had some failed marriages, so I'm on my 3rd marriage, which is the best marriage of all. I have an amazing wife now, and we have, she has a 15-year-old, so I got a 15-year-old stepson. He's playing like U15 AAA hockey, which is awesome, and super busy. I have a 13-year-old son that I adopted during my 2nd marriage. And he doesn't play athletics. He has a lot of special needs, but he's an awesome kid, and so we're pretty busy in terms of day-to-day stuff and what goes on. But I wouldn't really say it's been a consistent journey, to say the least. But that's life, right?
There's a few
You learn from experiences and mistakes, and you move on. But
it's typical.
3rd marriage is the best marriage.
You would, Chris, all I got is, I will. It'll be a T-shirt right there.
100%.
What I would say is, left turns happen in life, right? And as a pitcher, you're going to give up home runs. No one's ever gone through a career and not given up a home run or lost a game, at least that I know. Anyway.
Well, totally.
And so the key is you just dust yourself off and you go back at it. And tenacity is a pitching quality. It is something that pitchers do, or you can't play that position. as is the fear, is the ability to perform with people being over your back. I said this to Peters. Pitching's the only position on the field that there's actually someone going to be warming up in the bullpen to take your place, and you don't want that moment to happen no matter what, right? So you're always operating on that edge. So I think a lot of pitchers tend to be experiential learners. In life, they try new things, they do things sometimes a little unconventionally. So I'm glad that you're in a great place, and you're right. Third time's a charm is a great way to put it. Is there anything that, as you kind of motor towards retirement here, is there anything that you want to accomplish in the next little while that you just haven't gotten to because you've been so busy, visiting the Reverend Elvis in Vegas?
Nothing really like career wise, that being that long kind of on that team, like it was unbelievable, but completely unsteady. Like we were on call. Our service is not huge. Like, so we have, KW and that in Waterloo region. Our team was like, 16 guys, right? So we're on call all the time. So there's so many times you just didn't know what you were doing, when you were coming home. 5:00, you should be done work, and a call comes in and you're like, all right, well, you got to call home then and say, all right, I don't know when I'm coming home, right? And I know that's not easy for anyone. So for me now, things have really settled down. I'm on like straight days, which is amazing for the family. With everything going on with the kids in hockey and my son, and, my mom has some health issues. So it's really, really important, that I'm just here, I'm around. Right. And that is the most important thing for me now, is just being there for my family. I've had fun at work, and I make work fun. Right. But it's not, this isn't really, like I'm having fun, but I'm more focused on my family and being here, and doing those things. Like the days of the crazy calls and the adrenaline and all the stuff that goes with that, they're great stories, but they take their toll, right? So now, it's much more important to be, just regular and a good mental space, not, on high alert and stressed out all the time. And when I left the team, honestly, it took like 6 months probably to just deregulate and decompress, that I wasn't constantly looking at my phone, wondering whether I'm getting called in, if I missed something, what's going on, and that, like that's just not healthy, right? The unsteady sleep schedule, everything, that goes along with that. It was a hell of a lot of fun, but, it paid a price, right? So, maybe hence the third marriage. I don't know.
Well, we talked about it. We've talked about it frequently with Chris Peters, who is also in emergency services. But we talked a little bit about.
They get a lot of sleep though, those firemen.
Chris's case, he would have been sleeping while he was working still.
I love. Yeah, that's awesome.
I love Pete's to no end. But we did talk a little bit about the taxation that's there, and it's really hard for guys when they get to about 45, 55. They get a testosterone drop, and so mental health is really important. And we see it every day now. And I'm there's a bit of a headline today about Chris Simon, which I'm interested in. He's 52 years old, and
I didn't see that.
The inclinations are probably, even if they're not. I mean, I think when you look at other situations that were tied to NHL enforcers, for example, all around that age, there's just it's just a natural. So I'm sure that this is part of imparting the wisdom into those people that you mentor every day, to check in, to understand it's okay to be not okay, which is hard for guys to admit a lot of times,
Yeah. No, 100%, Mike. Like, you're dead on. And I do a thing with the recruits all the time, and I'm like, hey, right now you're at your baseline, you're at your zero, right? Like, you are going to change, and you have to change. You don't start into this profession and knowing what it's like going into a crack house or seeing, horrific car accidents and kids dying, right? Or like homicides. That's not normal, but it's how you deal with it and how you're able to cope with it. And it's very important. Everyone's worried about either physical fitness and working out and doing that, but you got to take care of your head too. And that is so important. And then knowing your change. And when your spouse tells you you're changing, right? Like, yeah, you are. And that's bound to happen. But it's about being able to talk to people, whether it's friends, whether it's, professional, like having someone that you can talk to all the time, whether it's even having that open communication, like with your spouse. And it's like, hey, like just having an understanding and being like, I was on today at work, like we had a big call, whatever it was, I was in charge of everything. I had to make a million decisions. Right now, I just want to have a beer, sit down, and I don't care what we eat because I don't care. I eat anything. I'm hungry, right? So I don't need to make another decision right now. If I want to watch the ball game and just veg out, right? But it's having that understanding and recognizing you need to do that to decompress. Because sometimes it's like, okay, people are able to do that when maybe they commute. Maybe they have a drive to or from work that they have some time that they can kind of settle down. They listen to tunes, whatever it is. You're listening to a podcast, you want to learn Spanish. I don't care what you do, right? Just do something, other than focus on just work, and, the stressors of life, because we've all got them. It doesn't matter what profession you're in, right? Like life can be stressful, and it's about how you deal with that and being healthy and, making good, like work-life balance decisions. And I think overall in every workplace has come a long way. Like I can think even at my police service and every service around, it has changed a lot. Like I've got buddies that, were involved in 2 shootings in the same week where they went back to work, they killed a guy and then went back to, the work the next day, shot another guy in the same week. Like that would never happen now. You're not allowed to do that, right? We know now, like that's not good for you to do that. Whether you think you are prepared for that, like having to take someone's life, it may affect you. It might not, but it may, right? And probably will, so it's about, being prepared for certain things and then having someone that you can talk with all the time. But I'm really glad that you are talking about mental health because it's huge, right? Like it is such a huge thing, and it's something that our generation of men, we're taught not to deal with that, right? To just suck it up. Like you and I and probably most guys never like saw certain emotions come out of our fathers, right? Or our grandfathers or anything like that, and it's yeah, that's just the way it is. Or was. Yeah. And not that it should be that way, right? And we're learning more and it's getting way better. And even in the last 10 years, the growth that's happened, in men's mental health and mental health in general, that it's really awesome that it's happening.
Yeah, Larry Houston said it best. We come from a generation where you rub dirt on it. And
yep.
That's kind of the mental process. And, there's just been too many casualties. I said on one of the earlier, I think the Peters one and probably with Larry, I've lost 5 ex-teammates, to this. And Peters has lost 7 work, a couple teammates, but also people through work when you work in fire services. And this is something that will hit home with the police services too.
For sure.
It's an issue. And I think just because we're in that age category, I think it's good. I've said this to everybody. We're teammates till the end. So we're always there to reach out and be someone you can talk to because you can trust us. We've survived McRae. We can survive life, Real quick question for you.
Yeah.
You're like me, I think one of the privileged few to be in the Brock Baseball Hall of Fame. What does that mean to you, other than a fancy plaque or a pat on the back? What does that mean to you? What do you think that means to what you could teach kids that are coming into the program if you were to speak to them?
It really does. Like, I'm very honored to be selected into the Hall of Fame. Like I wouldn't have thought that would happen, I didn't, obviously, and you were the same. We didn't start this, wanting that or thinking that was even such a thing, the program would develop as much as it did, but yeah, I am very humbled and honored, to have been selected into that. As far as building the program, truthfully, I haven't had anything to do with it, right? Like it was built, and you guys have done a great job as far as the tradition of things and the way things have gone. I wish I would have been more involved. Like I kept touch with Lounsbury a lot afterwards, and we've since, drifted apart like most of my relationships. But so I'm out of the loop on a lot of the things. But, this has definitely helped bringing it all back, and realizing, the importance of everything and the significance of what we did. I think honestly, I was just playing ball and having fun. I didn't really overthink things. And, like even, funny story. So last night, I'm doing like a Kitchener Rangers paid duty. Okay. And so just extra overtime. And I don't often do them, but my wife, like we have season tickets to the Ranger games and we go to every game. And my wife's like, hey, why don't you do this and make some extra cash? And, she wants some more shoes or something. And, so I'm doing this game and there's a guy that works for Rogers TV and his name's Sean Farrow. And he's, the kind of intermission guy, does the beginning. He interviews all the players. And I'm standing there talking to him. And all of a sudden he's looking at my name tag and he's like, you're Chris Ebel? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, I used to do the announcing for the Panthers. And he's like, I saw you win championships. I watched you play all the time. And he's like, this is amazing, and I was just like, I never thought of it. Right. And think of it now. I've actually thought more about baseball since you started this podcast and all these memories and that, and then like talking to him last night about our team and the Panthers and all the great guys that played and, in that league and on those teams that we won. And, yeah, so it's kind of funny to bring it all back now and reminisce and not to be like Al Bundy and like Pokai, and tell stories about how awesome, we were or anything like that, but overall, like I just love playing ball and I just love, being around the guys. And yeah, to be even recognized for anything, I find it very humbling and I'm very grateful for that opportunity, but I don't put, a lot of weight or thought into it. I'm just grateful that, I maybe did make, an impact in some way, right? That's it. Like
Chris,
it's just, yeah.
It's a beautiful thing though, if you think about it, the way that you've gone through this podcast, prior to your experience at the Rangers game, it was always about your dad. And now it's about you, because I think that your career and your life stands on its own 2 feet, which is great. Some of us have to battle the shadow of, a dad. I talked about Mike Landers, who unfortunately is one of those guys in the mental health scenario where his dad is the most famous windmill pitcher in the world. Mm-hmm. And Mike always struggled kind of getting out from under that shadow or the expectation that he was going to be great. Brad Reeson, who was a McMaster and my best man and my best friend, was a McMaster super player. His dad was always there, but also had a great baseball career as a left-handed pitcher. So, we all battle a little bit finding our own space in the sun. And that is the one thing that I feel best about, the program that we launched. And, you underestimate your contributions to it. The reality is, if you weren't out there every fourth game pitching the big innings there, my friend, they won't win a championship in 99. They won't, or, they just won't get there. They wouldn't have gotten there without, us putting Brock baseball on the map, without Mike McRae putting in a culture, without Jeff Lounsbury stepping up and taking it over, without Mark LePage being that, I like to call him the silent assassin, but a guy that just observed everything. I'd hate to play poker against LePage. He would just be like, he'd kill you every time. But,
yeah.
I think I think time gives us the ability to look backwards and go, yeah, this is not just some ball team I played on, because we all played on ball teams. Um, it was different than that. It's a group of people who've gone on to win in life, and they learned those lessons in, in our case, maybe 3 months time, of just the most intense kind of situation where we learned so much about each other and about others. That I think that that's a special gift that we all share. And I feel like we all have the same, I hate to use a law reference, but we all have the same prison tattoo that says, Brock Baseball on it, because it set the groundwork for the people we are today.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. I think we all gained a lot of just respect, work ethic, right, that we've taken from that time. The pride of the team, like being like truly able to kind of really put the team ahead of anyone's individual needs, and everyone just bought into it and got along. And like, sure, there was probably riffs here and there. Like every team has that. You got 20 guys with type A personalities, that all are, want to do the best that they can, right? And that's awesome. But that's what makes it great, right? Is that even when you're having issues, you still pull together as a team. And, like just the tightness of what we had. And that I think is what set that up, at least for several years of a winning tradition, is the way it started, and the work ethic and everything that started from day one. Right. So I don't know exactly if you can just put it all on, McRae, that he started everything and everything built off of that, but it sure makes sense, and, yeah, we were very lucky to have started the way that we did and had the program and the connections and the ability, like being geographically, like, because we could have been, in Waterloo, right, and not had the connections to everything that happened in New York State and Buffalo and all around there, right? And then being able to go to that distances. Sure, it's only an hour and a half more, but it is an hour and a half more, right? But being close to the border, that gave us such an opportunity to stretch, whatever it was, 18-game league schedule into, 35, 40 games or whatever we played. I don't even know what we played, but it seemed like a hell of a lot of ball in such a short time, right?
Yeah, I think we also benefited from not having football on campus. It's hard for those teams,
totally.
McMaster, U of T, some of these teams that have football programs. It's hard to get enough attention from the athletic department or the students to survive. They gasp for air, they need funding, those kinds of things. I have a pretty funny story I'll tell with Coach McRae about us doing those. Remember, we had to do the fundraising. We had to go sell the ads in the program, and Mike had arranged this pretty sweet deal with Blockbuster Video. I'm not going to, and then it got screwed over. We got screwed over by the athletic department. It's pretty funny. I'll tell it in retrospect, but
yeah, all right.
I think, listen, we're going to all see each other in about 6.5 months' time, and if there's anything that would be apropos, it's that you're going to have to rehab that arm at least to be able to throw an inning there, my friend, because
there's not a chance, honestly. So last year and a half ago, I had surgery on my left elbow. I had bad arthritis I didn't know about, and all of a sudden my elbow just locked up, and I was like, I can't move my arm. And they thought I dislocated it. They didn't know what happened. So I ended up being like really bad arthritis once they did x-rays and all the scans and that. And everyone was like, oh, that makes sense. Years of baseball. I go, I wasn't a lefty. I go, Christ, I wish I was a lefty, And then, I screwed up my right shoulder. Like all the years of baseball, I never had shoulder issues. I actually screwed up my shoulder not long ago, passing a drink to my kid in the back seat of my truck. So I reached back and I'm like, and I tore something in my shoulder. So now I'm just a mess. I was throwing the football around last summer with my stepson because he bet me that he couldn't throw the ball over the house and it would land over on the other side of the pool. And I'm like, there's no way you can do that. Like, it's not going that far. And so we're like, okay, let's go out and throw the ball and warm up. And after throwing the ball, I didn't want to admit it to him, but I was like, my arm was hanging. I was like, well, Jesus Christ, this is a disaster, you know? So, yeah, Mike, there's absolutely no way I can throw a baseball.
Okay,
like, none.
I've got a better idea then, because clearly you led the team in hitting. So you're going to have to at least go take a swing.
That would be totally embarrassing. Yeah. I'll lead the team in like some drinks or something like that, or, you know, I'll be on the dugout talking and having fun. That's
Jesus, I hope Brad Tupper's ready to throw 9 innings here.
Someone better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we should just play like pickleball or something else. I don't know.
We can't,
what do old people do now?
We can't do that, Ebes. We have no choice. McMaster will never let us live it down if we don't field the team. And then you know what it's going to be like. You know what it's going to be like, though, when we're in those uniforms. We're going to be in that clubhouse at Community Park. And it's going to be like, let's go kick their asses. That's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be horrific ball. We'll need to be sponsored by St. John's Ambulance for all the people that need oxygen or need to be carted off the field. But the reality is,
might have to bring an AED along, eh? Yeah.
But no one's going to want to. You know, the thing is, I think when you put spikes on and you put a uniform on and you get these guys back together, there's no chance that we are going to want to lose, because I just sweetened it a little bit. I haven't told anyone this, but the winning team is going to get an extra $1,000 donated to the scholarship we're planning for, right? So
yeah.
You know, like it's
right.
you know, look, those guys have Brad, who was an unbelievable person and sadly passed away about 7 years ago, and we've got Todd, who is an incredible person, and you know, it's still. Yeah. I don't know how he does it. I mean, I remember Todd from winter workouts and thinking, what a great guy. And he still shocks me every time I talk to him, because he's just the most positive, what can I do, roll up the sleeves kind of guy there is. And after 30 years, I can't wait to give that guy a big old hug, but more so, I can't wait to see him pitch in front of his wife and kids. And
that's awesome,
because he deserves it, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, hopefully Coach McRae doesn't make us do sprints if we lose, you know.
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen. I think we're good. Yeah.
Ebes, thank you so much for today. It's been way too long. So we'll see you soon, buddy. Let's grab a beer before we're due in St. Catharines. And
absolutely.
Thanks for
anytime.
This.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, Mike, and thanks for like everything that you're doing. I know it's been said already, but this is amazing. I'm absolutely loving, you know, getting these all the time and the emails saying, hey, I got a new one, and checking it out. And, you know, it kind of passes some good time at work too. And I can just listen to some stuff when I'm supposed to be working. And no, I love it. You know, you're doing a great job. Keep it up, you know, and I look forward to seeing the rest of the guys and reminiscing and hearing some more stories. Cause honestly, I wish I remembered everything that has happened. Because embarrassingly, some people are talking about things and I'm like, I don't remember that, you know, but, this has been really fantastic, and, you know, congratulations, and you've done an awesome job.
Well, I'll tell you, I can give you a little preview. The next one that goes up, and it'll be up before yours, is Mark Gasoyan. So no one's going to want to miss a Cass episode where he talks about living with Simmons. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, for sure. I know.
Chris, thanks a lot, man, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, all the best.
Well, the smell